Support for This Is an Experiment is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. And Manscaped's Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with the exclusive offer for you. That is 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code EXPERIMENT at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, that's about 8 million balls.
The experience is the experiment.
Today's guest has been here before, and she'll be here many, many, many more times. She is the wonderful Rachel Siegel. You know her as a musician. You know her as an artist. You know her as a songwriter. And now you know her as somebody coming out with a motherfucking album. Welcome, Rachel Siegel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
It's my pleasure to
I'm
be back.
Glad to have you back.
Ugh, I'm so excited.
So this is a big time for you. A couple days ago, you came out with an album.
Can you just say that again?
Couple days ago, you came out with a motherfucking album.
Woo! I can't even believe it.
That's so crazy.
I'm so excited.
It's so wild. So tell us a little bit about it. Tell us the synopsis. Tell us what we can expect when we go listen to it right now.
Yes.
And just tell us everything about it.
Thank you. My debut album is called Heart Injuries Are Cumulative. It's a collection of songs that I wrote right in the middle, going through some crazy trauma and grief and just healing the very best way, the only way that I know how. And so it's raw. It's I write in places that it's a hard, holy journey. And that's really what it feels like. It's just like me looking my grief right in the face and not shying away from the pain in order to process it and actually find the hope to get somewhere else.
Totally. Damn. So this is really a diary, if you will. This is you finding solace in situations that are part of your life.
Yeah. And
do you feel like you found that solace?
Yeah, I think like it's very much therapy sessions.
Yeah.
It's songs I wrote like not knowing how they were going to come out, but like I wrote myself to the truth in them. And I really honestly feel like yes, I can't even imagine how much I've healed and recovered, and the joy that's like alive inside me in all seriousness is something I could have never like seen coming.
It's crazy how healing it can be to have something that is vulnerable and maybe tough to talk about in a form that can be, processed by so many. I mean, you can have an hour-long story that's very impactful, but part of the art of storytelling is being able to make it something that can relate to others so they can understand. They can have that magnetic point to it where they can connect. I think music is that storytelling, kind of vessel, that medium that allows you to be honest, yet poetic, creative, yet vulnerable, and all these different, I don't know, it's just like this really cool fucking way where you can get everything out and you can do it in whatever space you want, and that you have no control over how somebody else interacts with it. That's something, you give everything you have, and now it's theirs to digest in whatever way they decide.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so beautiful because maybe situations that might have been very isolating and you're like, no one could understand this. I mean, I know I was like, no one could understand this because the grief was just so deep and so personal. I was able to say it in a way that people who might not understand exactly my grief or what I went through, can feel understood by the way I
Yeah.
express it and say, yeah, me too. And it's so cool how we can take things that felt like they separated us in such a wild way and use them to bring us together.
Absolutely. And the cool thing about this is what you're doing is you're putting your story into a medium that can resonate with people far past when we're here. That's the crazy thing is like somebody could pick this up in 50 years, 70 years, and whether we're here or not, connect with it all the same.
Right.
And I I've heard it. It's fucking wonderful. It is
Thank you.
accurate. It is truthful. I'm glad we got to do this the first time because I got to hear stories that I never knew about you. And we talked about it the first time. We were friends before that. We have friends that are fucking the greatest connectors and got to experience that friendship because of them. And there's so much you don't know about somebody until you have the opportunity to find out.
Absolutely.
And hearing your album and I can only assume that a lot of the emotion that comes from the stories you told me about our first podcast were conveyed in these songs and so kind of we were talking about this a little bit before. There's 7 songs that have already been released.
Hmm.
And then they're culminating into with a bunch more songs that create this full story, this full book.
Hmm.
You already released
Yeah.
7 chapters, if you will.
That's a good way to put it.
What in these new songs, what does it bring to the story that wasn't there with just the 7 songs?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, there is an intro
Mhm.
that kind of sets the stage for the journey that we're about to go on. And then halfway through, there's a song called Survivor's Guilt, which is just
Beautiful.
brutal. Thank you. And brutal. Um, and just, I think, me at my most vulnerable, um, realizing that there's no answer to the questions I have that would make the reality any better,
Mhm.
um, which is a really freeing thing to articulate. Um, and then there's the final song called Happy To, which is just a big old bow on it.
Mhm.
It's not a solution. It's not everything's all good now, but it's a sigh of relief that says, I'm happy you're happy, but I want to be happy too.
It's so interesting that that's the perspective you put it in because everybody's situations are brought under them with or without the will to have them come into fruition, or even the thought, or even any recollection of certain events happening ever. They never come to your
Mm,
mind until they're there. And you deciding to be okay with the fact that this will always, okay is a weird word, but to understand the fact that these feelings might always be with you,
mm,
and they probably will in
yeah,
in one way or another. Doesn't mean they always have to be crippling,
yeah.
but they're allowed to be yours. But you're deciding through this whole experience and through all these experiences and growing up with all the mindsets that life's given you, you still at the end of the day want to sit down and be able to smile and be happy no matter how anybody else perceives these situations. These are
Mm,
yours and it's your decision to make.
yeah.
And I think what it really does is it shows people that the only way to survive life is to process,
Mm,
is to think, is to talk, and is to move on without forgetting.
yeah.
And that's huge. I mean,
It is huge. And I think we have the option with everything,
yeah,
um, to not face it. Um, and I think that's easier,
totally.
but much more expensive because when we don't process and heal exactly like you're saying, things kind of have power over us
Yeah,
rather than us having power over things.
absolutely.
And I think I made a decision a long time ago that that was too expensive, that it would be too expensive to avoid things and not feel as much and as wild and as deep as I was feeling. And I didn't have language for it when I was going through it.
Totally.
I didn't know that there was ever another side.
Yeah.
There were days where there was no hope. And so it's wild that I can sit here with you now um, with a smile on my face and like laughing, being like, there actually was another side.
Yeah.
And exactly like you're saying, it's not that anything goes away. It's not that certain of these situations I talk about will ever get better.
Totally.
But there's just hope and joy, and it gets different. Even the
Mm,
deepest grief gets different, and life happens, and you learn to see that it can be good again. And like,
100%.
there's just still beauty, and it can all exist together.
Well, I'm a big fan of the thought that retrospect is the only way to defeat bullshit.
Mm,
And bullshit doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It's just the
yeah,
cloudy judgment that surrounds you in situations when you don't know the answer.
yeah,
And when shitty things in life happen, there is always bullshit. There's always thoughts that don't need to be there, but will be there, and that's part of life.
yeah.
And in retrospect, you can go back, you can sift through those, and you can grab the memories and the thoughts and all the things that you learned from these experiences, put them in your bag, bring them with you through life, and pull them out of your toolbox, if you will,
Mm,
as necessary. And
yeah.
I'm sure there's a lens that you're going to be looking through for the rest of your life, that because you decided to wake up and smile when you didn't have to,
Mm,
that'll be what helps you teach so many people how to move on without forgetting
mm,
and remember without dwelling.
yeah.
Because that's such a big thing, because you can look back clearly with this whole album. You can look back and put yourself in the shoes that you were in without being stuck in those shoes forever.
Mm,
And that's a really big thing, to be able to take control of those situations and allow them to be part of the toolbox now,
yeah.
because they're going to be, whether you like it or not. It just depends if how you're willing to use those tools.
Right. Well, I think the cool thing about like songwriting, you talk about tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
Songwriting has definitely been a huge tool in my toolbox
Fuck yeah.
because like um I had no I had no with a lot of these songs, I was processing what I was feeling, and I knew something that was like that needed to be written,
Hmm.
but I didn't necessarily know where it was going to land.
Yeah.
And as I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and would come back to it, I sort of co-wrote these songs with myself.
Mm.
I would write what I needed to write and then come back to it from a different angle and like outside eyes and say, oh, is that actually what I'm saying? Is that actually what I mean? And and I was very specific
Yeah.
um to not settle for a passable line in any of these songs or um uh um that sounds cool, so I'll just go with that. But I really just fought for truth inside myself and in this music. And that was such a huge tool of healing because there's so much power in just actually being able to identify things.
Totally.
And I think this album was such an exercise of identifying what was actually happening in my heart.
When you're sitting down to write, what does your process look like when you're going through these thoughts? What do you decide is not a throwaway line? What do you decide
Mm.
is a valid part of the story? Not valid, is a necessary part of the story to link you to the next part of it. And what do you decide is not going to be included in this album? Was there some lens you were looking through during that?
I think for me, most of these songs started with a burning idea that came in some way, whether it was like a burning conceptual idea or like a line that felt really important, or there's this one song, What If I Forget?
Mhm.
And I had this experience in 2020 where I tried to learn a song in an evening, and I learned it, I practiced it, I practiced it, I practiced it, and then the stress of trying to perform it, I just couldn't remember it. It was
Totally.
gone. And I had no ability at the time to accept that that forgetfulness was something that I dealt with as a result of some things that I had been through.
Totally.
And um and I wrote that as in trying to come to terms and understand what was happening in me, because it was totally it in that moment it destroyed me. I had no ability to accept what was happening or even recognize it, and I knew there was something in me I needed to work out. And so I sat down trying to work it out, and as I wrote those lines, like, and asked those questions, what if I lose all of my mind? What if it means I'm disqualified? What if my
Mm.
heart goes into debt? What if I give things I'll never get back?
My heart goes into debt.
As I asked those questions, it was like it just sucked the air out of them. And it was just like, yeah, maybe. And I'm still okay. Like maybe I've lost things I'll never get back. And I can still be a full human being with a future. And like I could still do anything I want to do. And I think just even asking those questions and holding space for myself in not knowing um, was freedom.
It's freedom, and it's also proof that you're giving yourself back the ability to live, which is so wild to think about, that the largest obstacle in anyone's life is themselves. And
Wow.
that's a choice.
Yeah.
That becomes a choice, I should say. It's something that you first have to learn about, first have to work through, and then it becomes a choice, because
Sure.
it's not always a choice off the bat. And life will be hard at points, and there's times when you're gonna be sitting there waiting for retrospect to allow a clearer vision of the past, and
Right.
that is going to take time, and the time is never consistent. It will never be a
Totally.
specific increment of time. It'll be when it happens, and that's all you can wait for. And I don't know, I feel like having this written down, having this recorded for you, now whenever you're feeling thoughts where you know you felt them before, but you need a
Mm.
little kick in the butt, a little reminder. Now you can go lay in bed, throw your headphones on, and listen to your own album, and be reminded why it's okay to stand up and smile, why it's also okay to lay down and cry, why it's okay to wake up the next day as a new one.
Mm.
And I just think that's so fucking badass that you gave yourself that. I think it's amazing that everybody else is going to have this as well. But I think the most badass part is now you 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 are forcing yourself to forever have a checkpoint.
Mm.
You have this lighthouse now. If you get lost and you're out there and you can't see anything, all you got to do is keep your eyes open for this lighthouse and sail back. And you'll have this grounding point. And that's why I'm such a fucking big fan of
Ugh.
musicians. That's why I'm such a big fan of artists and songwriters. And this space that we get to live in is we are consistently creating lighthouses and
Mm.
checkpoints to always have some way home. And most people don't have that.
No.
Most people go to work and every day have to remind themselves why they'll get through that day, why
Yeah.
it's going to be okay, and forget the fact that tomorrow they're going to wake up with the same thoughts. They don't have a checkpoint. They don't have a lighthouse to go back to. And the fact that you were willing to give your lighthouse to the world to also have as theirs says it all. And that shows that you were ready for it too. Like that's such a big fucking step. What what comes after this lighthouse? What is the next lighthouse for you? Is it going to be surrounding the same stories, or is it going to be a journey onto the next story, or where do you see what do you see coming in next?
Well, thank you for that. I'm honored that I was able to go on this journey myself and
Mhm.
that now I get to share it, and I'm so excited for all of the like connection that's going to happen, and
Totally.
vulnerability always leads to connection. And so like I'm just so excited to like meet people and hear their stories, and now let this album be something beyond just me in my bedroom processing my feelings.
Absolutely.
Um and I feel like in doing this, with that last song of just kind of being like, I'm okay now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so excited to tell new stories and for more life, because there's so much to let in and there's so much that's coming, and I just like can't wait for all of it.
And now you just made room for more.
Exactly.
And that's the thing is like we have an internal Dropbox, if you will. We
Mm,
can throw our memories and experiences on the cloud, and now they're out there forever, and we can always go back to them. But now we have a little bit more space in our hard drives for new experiences and new opportunities and new people and new songs and new loves and new hates and new, just new life in general. And that's such a cool experience. And like, people always say, "Oh, I wish this artist was still like this. I used to like him when they're like that." And it's like they already got that out. That story's been told. They're looking for the next story, and if you're still on their old one, that's okay. You're allowed to
yeah,
have that, but they also need to be allowed to continue their story and keep opening up room for more.
absolutely. I love that you said that, because we're humans, and like if we're not growing, we're decaying. And so
Mm,
like I hope my next album looks, feels, sounds a little different. I hope that like you said stuff about like you referred to like timeless music and
yeah,
music that has like a life beyond itself, and like in 25, 50 years. And that's honestly what I set out to do. Like, I want to write songs that people will show their grandkids, because it's the songs that they lived their lives to and they fell in love to and they cried to.
mm,
And, and I want songs. Like my biggest dream, I guess, would be within music, would be to have songs that have a life 50 years from now. And, um, that really is the most beautiful thing. And such an honor that we get to evolve and we get to keep writing these timeless stories, and keep, because there's always going to be someone who relates to a different part of our life and our
100%.
journey, and that's one of the things that I'm like most excited
So what do you think's next? Have you started writing for
about.
whatever comes next? Do you have an idea of a new story or a new part of your story that you'd like to tell that you're comfortable telling us about?
I'm hesitating because yes, I have started writing, and I'm not certain how much I'm willing to say, but I am really excited to tell different stories and different, and like focus on different facets of myself as a human.
Yeah,
This album was healing and is healing, and that will be always.
yeah.
Um, and I'm excited to let more in.
We'll have more podcasts coming, that's for sure.
I can't wait.
So give us, before we wrap this up, give us a synopsis on how you feel now that you know this project is no longer just yours, it's the world's.
Mm. I feel honored. I feel relieved.
Yeah,
I feel like I have work to do.
absolutely.
But I'm so excited, and I'm just in awe to be here.
How boring would it be if we didn't have work to do,
I know.
you know? And anybody who thinks they don't, look in the mirror again. You can always be better. You can always continue to grow. And it's also a process to continue to be a good person. People forget that if you stay the same, you will decrease in who you are and the
Mm,
vibrations you give off to the world. This is a process of hard work to continue to do your best. It's a hard work and a process to continue to grow and have new experiences. And that's something that clearly you're ridiculously understanding of, is the
mm.
fact that it's always going to be work, and that's something we get to do. That's
Yeah.
that's that's this is not promised. So we might
No.
as well continue to grow and continue to use our experiences to help as many people as possible. And that first person you got to help is yourself. And I give you huge fucking props for this project. It is beautiful. It is compelling. It is organic. It is emotional. It is so many things that I'm glad that I got to hear and that I needed. And I really, 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 really urge all of you to listen to, whether you think you need it or not, you do. It's so helpful, it's so beautiful, and I'm proud of you. That's just fucking
Man,
phenomenal.
thank you so much.
Of course.
That means so much to me. I know I said so much twice, and so I was trying to find different words, but like I
Appreciate
can't even believe that anyone would listen, let alone like feel me. And so I'm honored.
Well, you
And
did it. You
thank
killed
you.
it. Everybody, go listen to her new album. It is out now. Tell them what it's called.
Heart injuries are cumulative.
It is out everywhere. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm really excited to have you back on again and keep seeing the growth.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here.
Always. Always, always. Well, you're always welcome back.
Well, I can't wait for next time.
We'll make it happen. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Go stream her new album. I appreciate you. And to everybody out there, remember what to say?
I am Rachel Siegel, and this is an experiment.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
The experience is the experiment.